Hi, everyone. Welcome to our last section, yay, on social emotional development in adolescence. So by this point, you should know which theorist am I going to talk about in this domain. As always, Erikson, right? So, if I just focus on the positive outcomes here, because we've covered all these stages, the first stage, they could develop trust, then demonstrate independence, then seek responsibility and new experiences, then feel competent and confident. And now they're in that stage of adolescence. And they're either going to come out of this stage with a strong sense of identity or identity confusion. So a strong sense of identity is being able to define, who are you? What do you value? Where are you going in life? So you've explored, and Erikson believed that's how you resolve your identity crisis of adolescence, is exploring what's out there. Once you explore, you start to commit to those self-chosen values like a career, relationships, ideals, right? And if not, you lack that direction. And many times they feel that those who come out identity confused maybe had restricted exploration in adolescence. Now, that could have been due to earlier conflicts that were not resolved positively, but it could also be to a restriction, right? Think about your parents. Did they allow a lot of exploration when you were a teenager? Mine really didn't. I had to kind of be home. I wasn't allowed to kind of explore to find out who I was, and kind of did it on the sly, because what that then makes you is unprepared for adulthood. So again, dealing with past issues, resolving earlier conflicts will then allow someone to enter adulthood and the more healthy, positive outcomes. But again, many teens don't even know what's going on, let alone to be able to reflect on it and resolve conflict. So sometimes it kind of leads into adulthood. Now, what about relationships with parents and children at this age? Well, teens are shifting from going to their parents pretty much for everything to more internal reflection and peers. So they kind of de-idolize their parents. So the recommendation is for parents to find that balance between connection and separation. And again, it can be difficult as the child's getting older and you're trying to adapt your style with their needs. Okay, what about friendships in adolescence? Now we typically have fewer best friends, start to become close with just, a select few that we can self-disclose, and we start to learn about trust and those we can trust and those maybe we can't. Again, friends tend to get more similar or are similar as they're adolescents. So you have to think about, are you with other people that have your shared identity status or your aspirations? Because again, can be a positive influence or maybe not so positive. And they find that typically females tend to be more emotionally close, while males tend to connect based on similar activities and status. Now, social networking, as we're talking about social development, technology can bring friends together. They do find that technology users are usually as extroverted and connected as other adolescents. It might be a lifeline for those who aren't so extroverted and are more isolated. But it's funny, you look at this picture and is this social or is this solitary? They might be being social over social media, but they're right next to each other, not connecting, right? So we find as we progress more and more with technology, the interactions, especially with teens, is really changing. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about identity statuses. James Marcia in 1980 had kind of learned under Erikson and saw teens and young adults and thought, there's very different statuses of who they are. And a lot of it's based on, again, how much have they explored and how much have they committed. So this chart goes from low exploration and low commitment all the way to high exploration and high commitment. So let's break these down, starting with diffusion, the low. So teens who are identity diffused have a low commitment and a low exploration. They're not out there trying to find out who they are or kind of being active in their identity process. And then they're not committing to things, right? Let's say they get a job and then they lose the job. They might say, well, I didn't really want that job anyway. I just needed a job, right? So they're not really committing. They're not really having a direction. And it just leads them in this state of having an unclear identity. Identity foreclosure is a little bit different because although there's still low exploration, there is high commitment. Well, what we find is they commit to these values and goals without really exploring alternatives or what might be best for them. And typically they accept these ready-made identities that have been kind of forced upon them. Well, many times by parents, right? Of growing up, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to, and kind of feeling just that acceptance without exploring. Some end up being happy in those careers and those choices. Others kind of feel like nothing was really their decision. So both of these statuses with the low exploration, they find these teens to be inflexible, intolerant, a little bit difficult in terms of trying to communicate with them about their identity. Now, these two are both high exploration. Moratorium is with low commitment and achievement is with high commitment. So moratorium is they keep exploring, but for some reason have a hard time making those commitments. Maybe they're anxious about what will come with that, so they just keep exploring. But again, that doesn't leave them with a strong sense. They just are keep going. It's kind of that endless seeking. And then identity achievement, again, you've explored what's out there, you've committed to things that are self-chosen for you. And both of these statuses are considered mature and healthy routes for developing identity. Now, Kohlberg is a new theorist mentioned here, and he has a theory of moral development. He was influenced by Piaget. He, learned about his different stages and, cognition development. And then Kohlberg kind of went off of that and went into, why do we make the decisions we make? Why, when faced with a decision, do some people go one way and others go another route? So he presented 10 to 16-year-old males. Again, I don't know why it was only boys, but he presented them with this hypothetical moral dilemma called the Heinz dilemma. And based on their responses, he would put them into different levels and different stages, again, based on their level of moral development. So here's the Heinz case. And again, you can pause it and kind of read it for yourself. But basically, Heinz was a man whose wife was dying of a special kind of cancer. They found out there was a drug, but when he got to the drug store, he found out that the druggist was charging way more than he could afford. He tried to raise money, and then finally it was kind of at that moment where his wife needed it or she was going to die. So, the question then is left, if Heinz broke into the man's store and stole the drug to save his wife, should he have done that? Should he have not? And then have children kind of explain their reasoning behind it. Now, I'm going to kind of go over some possible answers of what children might say that would put them in these different categories. But he has these different levels. And again, they look kind of similar to Piaget, right? Where the first level would focus on rewards and punishments. The second is more about social rules. And the last is looking at, moral principles. So that pre-conventional level, again, they're focusing on punishments, rewards. They judge the action based on, well, did you get in trouble? So stage one, again, is focusing on avoiding punishment and fear of getting in trouble. So here are their arguments. If they're in this stage, the pro-stealers would say, you can't let her die. then you're going to get in trouble for letting her die. So of course you have to steal the drug. The anti-stealers would say, you can't steal. They're going to throw you in jail, right? But yes, their answers are different, but they're coming from the same kind of fear of authority. Now, stage 2 is now about the purpose. Why did they do it? What was their, what was their reasoning? So stage 2, the pro-stealers would say, if Heinz wants to save his wife, it's up to him. And same with the anti, if he does it, he's going to have to deal with the consequences. It seems more risk than it's worth to me, but it's up to him, putting that choice back on the person. The conventional level now is again about conforming to social rules. Stage 3 is about fairness and regarding others as they do themselves. So pro-stealers would say, no one's going to think bad of you if you steal because you're saving her life. But the anti-stealers would say, everyone's going to think you're a criminal, so you shouldn't steal, right? So they're still focusing on how everyone's going to look at you, how, are you meeting that social norm? Stage 4 is, obeying those laws under all circumstances, enforcing the law. So pro-stealers would say, yes, it's wrong to steal, but it's his duty to protect his wife, so he's just going to need to accept the penalty. Anti-stealers would say, even if someone is dying, you don't get to disobey the law. It would be chaos if people decide what laws they want to follow and what they don't, right? So they're, again, focusing on keeping the social order. Now, this last level moves beyond laws, beyond rules, and really defines morality. So stage 5 kind of looks at reinterpreting and changing the law if necessary. So pro-stealers would say, there is a law against stealing, but there's not a law against violating a person's right to live, right? That's one of our rights. So we need to reinterpret this law. And they wouldn't really have an anti-stealing argument because, again, we shouldn't be violating a person's life. We should be saving someone no matter what. Stage 6 is, again, that everyone has worth and dignity. It should be valid for all people. So again, there's no anti-stealing argument. The only argument is that property should never be more important. We have a duty to save the dying. No matter what, he should do that. And again, the law is secondary. Right? So thank you guys for sticking with that. Here's kind of a real world moral dilemma, right? If you're involved in a car crash and you get out of the car, you're intercepted by a tearful woman who seems to think that she hit and killed the pedestrian, but you did. So how do you handle that situation? Do you let the woman take the blame, or do you confess your responsibility? So something to think about. Thank you guys, and as always, reach out with any questions.